Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Genius States. It's been a while. Introducing also Smichenji, our my co-host, and a very, very special brother. A huge shout out to the one and only Master myself, Jordan Damari, our IMC brother, and of course the tribal leader, Jordan Damari. Today's topic is, all about the solar stuff, all about astrology. Tell us about you and about the topic of today. The floor is yours.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you. Thank you. First and foremost, brother, for having me, both of you guys. It was an honor for us to just sit down and chop it up yesterday. We spent a good hour or so just masterminding and doing what we do best as tribal leaders. So man, I'm excited that this is the topic. Actually, I love solar topics. I love astrology. I love anything that has to do with the stars. You know what I'm saying? And our solar system is it's always been very fascinating to me. It's something I've always been intrigued by and gravitated towards. So my personal relationship with understanding the sun and how we cooperate with the sun was, man, I want to say it truly unlocked for myself like in 2016 or so. I was living in Tucson, Arizona, going to the University of Arizona. And then I moved back up here to Phoenix, Arizona, which is about an hour and a half away. And when I first got up here, like to Phoenix or what have you, I remember just spending time taking long walks. And those long walks, of course, were during the day. And just with the information that I came across at the time and so many different things that were conjuncting in a sense at that time, I was in a state of mind where I had a process where I would go outside every single day. I would go to the park and I would play my music. I would get a little bit of a workout routine going, but primarily my objective was to just get in the sun. It was to be out in the sun and absorb all that energy, all that frequency that was. So I would at some time spend 4 to 6 hours outside at a time, just being in the sun, being at the park, working out, meditating, absorbing, literally just sitting and absorbing the sun, because I understand there's power in the sun. There's a I draw power from the sun, I can say. It connects with, I know first and foremost, as many scientists have discovered, melanin, it plays a huge part in being able to receive the frequency, the chromosomes, the light rays or what have you, from the sun. So that's been my relationship so far, and yeah, I don't want to go too deep into it without having y'all feedback and whatnot. But yeah, I just wanted to tap in on that real quick. Hope that answered the question.
Yeah, brother. That's amazing, man. I did hear about was it melanin? Is there also like something to do with melanin and like our skin cells or anything like that? Like, is there something like directly related to the sun and what it does? Like, how does that process like
Man,
happen?
so yeah, I don't want to, I don't want to go into it without having the actual facts and research what have you behind it, but I do know that there's a connection between the rays from the sun that come down and shine towards our, like you were saying, the skin cells or melanin skin cells, and that was what allows us to, man, the lingo and the terminology is escaping me right now for whatever reason, but excuse me, I just remember reading something recently where it was saying, you know what, it's not reading something, it was this video here. I'll play a video real quick if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, go for
it. This video basically goes into detail exactly what melanin, the relationship between melanin and the sun is. So there it is. If you drink a certain amount of water, or something happens with some water, they already know that something and bring you all the shit you need. So sleep deprivation is one of the keys from the government. And what else? Dehydration. Right? If you look at one of the cells in melanin is H2O. And this book here, Kundalini Evolutionary Enlightenment. Evolution Enlightenment by John. Okay, well, I guess he didn't talk about it. I thought he did for some reason, but essentially, go ahead.
That's super powerful because, like, you know, just thinking about it, how we have all these kind of like things against the sun, like, oh, you get skin cancer and like all this negativity against the power of the sun, man. And it's so powerful that these ancient cultures like used to pray to Ra, and like, you know, in my own culture, in the yogic kind of tradition, there's an actual sun salutation, you know, that you do when the sun rises. And that's so interesting. And it was just the solar eclipse quite recently, you know what I mean? And that's another interesting like kind of correlation. What exactly, like, what happens during an eclipse, like astrologically? Like what is that process? That why do people, you know, release the old and like do these rituals during these times? Like I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, man. You know, I'm not an astrologer officially just yet. That is one of my goals. But based on my research that I've done so far, all of the planets, our moon, you know, the Mercury, Venus, and basically our solar system, it's constantly transiting, right? It's constantly moving and aligning. And every time that something moves or aligns, we find ourselves, it's the concept, you know, the universal law. I've got the Kabbalion here as well, but as above, so below, right? So as above, what's going on, what the transits are happening as the you know, let's say the moon was moving in front of the sun, that's what we call an eclipse, or a lunar eclipse or what have you. The solar eclipse is obviously the sun coming in front of the moon. And but what that does is that releases our the energy within us, right? We all have a moon sign along with our sun sign. Those are representations of what's going on upstairs, right? As above, once again, so below. So as above, as things are moving up above us, inside of us also, we have energy centers that move in correlation with that, right? And so knowing that when a solar eclipse happens or a lunar eclipse or the moon is a full moon, you know, we have a transiting of the energies that's going on down here. So a lot of people don't realize how impacted they are. Well, I'll say this: those who are less aware of themselves, for example, will be more impacted by this universal energy. Those who aren't aware of the fact that there's a sun and a moon and a Mercury and a Venus and a Jupiter and a Neptune and all of those different planets that correlate, that relate to our own energy centers. Those who are not aware of that process at all are more influenced than those who are, right? But these transiting, these energies are just an indication as to what is going on up above. So we find that correlation, we pay attention and we notice, we can better predict what's going to transpire after that, or what energy will be transferred at this time, or why this will be a good time to mix with this person or do this thing. You know, there's a certain time, there's a right time for everything. And, you know, there's a certain time to implement these different things. Now, what's interesting for me is, you know, blending this technology, once again, with the astrology or what have you, with the AZD, you know, technology, you know, knowing and understanding that we are our own creators in that sense. And we have the full right to step into our creative process. I look to combine these, you know, I look to say, okay, what's going on up above in the stars, what have you. And I correlate that to my personal creative process. Okay, cool. What can I do tonight? If there's a full moon coming up, such and such amount of time. What can I do to cleanse myself? What affirmations can I, tap into? What things can I do for myself that will allow me to prepare myself for this time? Because once again, it's a season. There's a time for everything. Right now, there's a season of the winter season. The Sagittarius transiting into the Capricorn season it's a season where we get familiar with the cycle of things. So we come back around this time, okay, there are certain people that are around at this time. There's certain people that just fall off. There's what we call cuffing season, right? That all of this shit is real, but it's all based on cycles and the seasons as to what's going on. So yeah, man, that's been my creative process, is just finding a way to blend, like I said, not even blend, but integrating is the best way to say it, because integrated mental concepts is IMC Nation. And so integrating IMC with that is really ancient technology. It comes from our ancestors and whatnot. So that's what I have to say on that.
Man.
And out of curiosity, right? What was the greatest or one of your more interesting realizations when combining astrology with the IMC technology?
Yeah, man. Let's see. I haven't looked at it that way to see what realization. Like I said, there's been a lot of just the integration that's taking place. Let me see, the realization. One realization has been my role within IMC Nation, my relating to all of IMC Nation is founded for myself, and knowing that I have so there's so many different houses, so many different aspects of astrology altogether, right? But I have in my man, I wish I knew exactly what house it was. I want to say my 11th house, because that's the Aquarius house. But I have Saturn in Aquarius. What does that mean? That means that in a short way, basically it's not easiest. And it's funny because I've interviewed a few brothers, a part of IMC, and they also have the same trait on their chart. But it's not easy for us to correlate with the rest of the world, right? How we do that is specifically through these avenues, right? Being a part of, IMC Nation is a part of my life purpose, in a sense. I gained that clarity. I realized that after going through my birth chart, working out the details, I actually have a whole layout of my personal chart that I broke down or what have you. And I just translated into my own words, basically. And so that was the biggest thing for me, knowing that I'm in the right place, doing exactly, because I know I'm supposed to belong to a very special group of individuals. So that's actually like almost directly what it says in my birth chart, right? And when I found that, I was just like, wow, this makes so much more sense, as to why I align with these people, with this frequency, with this technology, and it just brought more clarity to my life purpose. So I know that, once again, things happen for a reason, and we're all aligned for, based on things that are outside of our own awareness. But like I said, once you become aware of it, then you take more creative control of your process, more of your creative process. So I know AZD in particular has a certain understanding of himself and of astrology. We've heard him briefly talk about anytime he's like cold reading a female or what have you, he'll briefly go into different aspects of that sign, and he's spot on every single time. He'll say something about a Pisces. Pisces, they get along with everybody, very spiritual with their whole secrets. Capricorn, very boss-like, very sound in their career, and very successful typically. And Fernando is a Capricorn. So we can look to different aspects, and that's, like I said, that's how I process so many different things. So if I don't know you on an astrological level, we're probably not connecting on the level where if I do know you on an astrological level, then we can correlate on a deeper level. So that's been a lot of my realizations in my process. And I'm curious, because I know, Samad, I know we tapped in on the self code and on your podcast as well, but what have you realized, or have you realized anything personally after going through your chart, or anything with astrology for yourself? I'm curious. And you too, Ryan, if you
Yeah, man. Just noticed like I just kind of hang around like similar frequencies of people, like similar signs. And I'm always surprised like when I find out like, uh the kind of compatibility factor, you know what I mean? Like I
yeah,
love Pisces energy, man, especially
yeah,
in the female, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And just like there's certain like water signs that I get along with, and just like certain energies that just you can definitely sense that there's something clicking, right?
yeah,
So yeah, in my own process, that's just what I've observed is just there's definitely a certain um it's a certain kind of classification, almost like a system of like classifying, like okay, there's certain kinds of personalities, right? And just seeing that has also, yeah, helped me kind of understand, okay, um there's going to be certain people that are going to resonate with what I have to say, and there's certain people that don't, and that's completely valid and completely fine, because yeah, we're all part of this system. And it's interesting, man, how it's called a solar system, right? It revolves around the sun. And so that's why I'm tapping into this like idea of solar consciousness, because yeah, all the planets revolve around it. It's like it's the center point, right? Almost the cause point or choice point, which is a very masculine energy, right? Uh, and there is this kind of classification as well of like, the sun being masculine, moon being feminine. Uh, do you know where that comes from, or like how that classification, came to emerge?
I don't. I can't say I do. But I would well, not assume, but I would suggest that that comes from understanding the roles or what have you, that the sun plays and the moon plays, right? The moon has just a nighttime effect, right? It comes out at night. Coming out at night, gives us it's a different kind of energy, right? That goes on at night. They say that women are the eve, the evening, of the night, and meaning that they're in a sense in control of the night. So then it would be vice versa for men. Men would be in control of the day, or what have you, in that sense. So um, I don't know where it comes from. I know there's a deep rooted foundation in that, but like I said, I'm not an official astrologer or anything like that. But I've just done my research to whatever extent, and really, what I've learned through studying astrology has been that the only true confirmation is going to come from the person that's doing the analyzing, right? Because every single person is going to be able to validate for themselves. Okay, does this make sense for me, or did this line up for me, or did this? Because I could say my sun sign doesn't mix with a whatchamacallit, moon sign that's a Pisces. So Virgo, their opposite is a Pisces, right? So I could say sun sign Virgo doesn't mix with the Pisces moon or what have you. But that would be based on my own personal experience. It could work for somebody else who also has that same dynamic, right? It works differently for every single body because we're all uniquely made. We're all uniquely gifted, and that's our personal blueprint, our birth chart. That's like our map to life, and that's our beginning, standpoint. So I use that for myself just to validate what my life experience has already been. Right? It's a confirmation. It's not a direct, guide or what have you. It is just a confirmation. That's how I use it. Right? It's a confirmation of my life circumstances, situations, and who it is I come into contact with. So,
Man, that's powerful. And what you said earlier also about, the awareness preceding that creative control.
mhm.
And yeah, that's kind of how I see is this astrology is a map, and how you use it is going to change your life, right? Because once you're aware of it, and then obviously if it filters through a lot of things, right?
Yeah,
It's like you're putting on astrology goggles to see the world.
right,
So
exactly.
yeah, man. Back to this topic of solar energy and this solar idea. Um, I want to share a mantra with the audience, basically, which is a very sacred Hindu mantra, right?
Mm,
For the sun specifically, which is Om Surya, and then you go Namaha. Okay,
mm,
so it's Om Surya Namaha, and you kind of have to say in a resonant way. So
okay.
it's like Om Surya Namaha,
Mm,
and you keep repeating it. Generally, you do it 108 times. Like that's
mm,
kind of the repetition through the mantra beats.
yeah.
But yeah, it's supposed to be really powerful for solar eclipses as well, apparently. So yeah, I just wanted to share that very briefly with the audience because I thought
What
that was, yeah.
what does that do in particular? That mantra. Like what is the intention behind it? I guess.
It taps you into the power of the sun. So some people
Mm,
say that it helps you like skin glow and like you become
mm,
lighter, like like think of a
uh,
metaphor of what the sun is,
yeah.
and then it gives you that, like it gives you that essence of lightness or that radiance um of sunlight throughout your
Mm,
world. So
mm,
that's what it's supposed to do, is it's supposed to tap into that.
okay. Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. Especially using it in conjunction with mala beads or what have you. Having a 108 different times. I've heard that process often. To be honest with you, I haven't applied it, but I've heard it often. Master Pyro, who's our director and master videographer within IMC Nation, has brought that up as a spiritual process and tool that he's used many different times. So I'm excited to get into application of that. And I'm glad you said that it requires a certain resonant frequency in the sense that you have to repeat it in, because if you do it without that, there's a disconnection. You know what I'm saying? It's Excuse me. I know, of course, through studying AZD, the value of saying something, a certain way, or taking your time on how to say something, or enunciating the different things makes a huge difference. The way that things are said will change the dynamic of what is being said, in a sense. I think that's what I've learned over the years, being around AZD and just witnessing the way that he carries his own communication. So yeah, man, thank you for that. That's a powerful mantra right there. Ryan, you got a face full of thoughts over there, man. What's going on?
Yeah, Ryan, what's up?
Yeah, so many thoughts. First thing was, shit, I haven't looked at my birth chart in so long. In so long. I was like, only thing I remember was, okay, cool, I'm a Virgo with the sun sign in Leo, etc., which causes me to be like this duality of personalities, right? And
Yeah.
there's this funny story where I was called on when I'm in class, back in high school. Um, I would be like this absolute introvert geek guy in class, but the moment it's recess, I'll become this, wannabe Casanova, talking to every girl, which and where, in school, out of school, especially on the dance floor. And I was always confused by, maybe it's just me, and only, to be validated by this random birth chart test that I did. That's like, look at that shit, right? And as I've grown into the INC process, of course, I did a bit more research into, the background of my character. Let me say the character that I'm moving towards, but my, let's say, birth chart character. And it's funny when you find out, apparently I'm a natural leader. Apparently, charisma is in my blood, which would explain the dance moves. But of course, I'm making a joke. But um, what if you would compare astrology to how you would run a business? What Frank White once told me was, if you know when a company officially has started, right? Let's say the birth of a company, not per se the test phase of a company, you can predict its success. Hence, looking at Chinese and especially some Indian companies and Japanese companies, especially in the Middle East, the date of start becomes extremely important because it already is a part of previous successful companies. Now, of course, it doesn't mean they would have the same success, but every blessing counts, man. And it all almost reminds me of, oh, what if, right? The universe does have a plan for you. If you go against it, it's the universe and you're like less than a speck. Of course, part of you will be destroyed because it's not of the universal plan, right? And that's something I learned from Frank White specifically. As he kind of pushed towards, doing a little bit of research, figure out, are you more introvert and extrovert? Maybe, you know. But at the end of the day, what if all the information you need is reality? You just need to connect the dots. See the dots. So that's what I think, man. So me, I'm a Virgo, sun sign, Leo. Everything else about houses, I have no clue. I have the PDF somewhere. If you want, we can look at it.
Yeah, man, I would love that. That's so powerful. That was something that I had come across recently as well. Knowing and understanding that we all individually. I mean, you think about how we were created, right? How babies were created. There was a certain time. There was a inception time, right, or conception time. There was a process of our experience before we were even manifested, right, or born into this world. So yeah, knowing and understanding we can apply that to businesses in that same respect, that blew my mind, because then I began to think about everything, everything, like this building, that the buildings that we're all living in, our residences, for example, all have a birth chart, quote unquote, right? They all have an origin point. And based on that, things literally happen to that building because it had that inception point. That was that beginning, that origin point. And from there, we can look at that and know that, okay, let's say, this building was built 1969, on this day, or what have you. Like, it literally is from that day, it's going to have certain experiences down the line. So that began to really explain my mind, because we're not talking about just people, we're talking about our whole universe, we're talking about all of expansion. Everything has a beginning and an end, literally. And our whole universe is a universe of cooperation, right? Everything works together. And yeah, man. So
Man, that's so powerful. And what I'm thinking about right now is like actually what Ryan brought up about like the character of your astrology, right? Because it's like your sun sign is like the role you play, right? The moon sign is like kind of your feelings, I guess, your emotions. And I think the ascendant is kind of like the what you show, like your mask, like your social mask, right? Like what you show the world,
yeah,
but it's not really what's within. So
right.
it's so like that's exactly what like it is kind of the constructs, the armoring of your character, right? The what you
Yeah,
show, and then the
yeah,
internal world, like it goes
absolutely.
deep. And so and like Venus means love, and like Mars means
Yeah,
combat, and all
yeah,
of these things. And so yeah, going into the planets, we can almost start to interpret the planets and even the symbols themselves, right? Like,
right.
yeah, I'm a Scorpio. Well, yeah, I bite sometimes, but then I also kind of, I go into my own world, and I trust is a big thing, loyalty, right? And all these different things. So yeah,
Man,
it's interesting how the correlations happen. Yeah.
yeah. And man, it's amazing, because as you're saying that right now, I'm thinking of all the different we call them aspects. So the correlating points, to where if you have a whatchamacallit, let's see, if you have let's say that you have a Venus in your third house, which means that you, let's see, the third house is a Gemini. So let's say that means that basically you would love deep conversations in a sense. You'd be attracted to those who can hold a deeper level of conversation. If you have Venus in your Gemini or in your third house, right? So that being there, and then let's say that in your what's the opposite of three? Sagittarius. So in your Sagittarius placement, let's say that you had a in your Mars, you had your Mars in your Sagittarius. So Sagittarius and Gemini are opposing. That would make that correlation a square, is what they call that, right? Or depending on the correlation, of course, in the chart. So that would either be like a square would be 90 degrees, a trine is 120 degrees of a relationship. And all those degrees of relationship just basically tell you what that relationship is, how that blends with this. So, you can have certain aspects that there's some people that are really good with money. That doesn't happen by accident. Like I said, that's part of their blueprint, but that correlates to some other aspect in their chart that makes them really good with money, right? Let's say that they're good with money amongst their families, and then they would have something in their fourth house, which would be their Cancer type energy, and that's like a home body type of energy as well, family type of energy. So how things correlate is very, very, very essential to know what is really, that's what makes an aspect, right? If I'm a trine if I have a trine relationship, that means that I'm relating to two different aspects on my chart, which is probably a complex idea, but basically you are correlating, what I'm saying, your universe in two different ways to two different aspects of yourself, right? But the very first house of the astrology chart is the house of self, in a sense. It's the Aries is the very first, archetype, you could say, of understanding yourself in that sense. But the first role that we all have is to figure out ourselves, right? And that's why that's our first house, right? It's the self, and then it goes to money, discipline, and then it goes to siblings, and so on and so forth. So it follows that trail, but that's where it begins. So that's where I first, of course, found my truth, or what have you, in a sense, was just diving into, how much do I really know myself? Well, I don't really know. Let me start to figure it out. So I started figuring that shit out, and one thing after another just adds on. And I had this saying that I love to say, it's just knowledge of self is knowledge of wealth. The more that you know about you, the more that you know what value you bring to the table, right? And that's just the blueprint that you came into this world with, right? So many people are operating without that, and just operating, nonsensically. And it's so powerful, man, because our relationships are steered by these, our finances, everything is literally steered in the direction of how much we truly know, like how I relate to this person, how I cooperate with this person, even how I communicate comes across, based on the way that I understand how I communicate, right? I know I have a Gemini moon for myself, so that means I typically fancy, conversations about knowledge, information, what I'm saying, wise things, and I love communicating it as well. So, those are different aspects that I've learned about myself over time, and yeah, man, I don't want to ramble too long, but just wanted to say that.
But you just said that. Two things. One, how would you recommend a newbie start with your process, your teachings? Where should he begin?
Well, well, in reference to what? Like what kind of teachings? Because
in the teachings of your astrology, because let's say to know thyself through astrology, how would he or she pick it up?
It's a good question. That's a really good question. Because there's different avenues, and tapping into yourself. There's, of course, the Self Code podcast, which I've talked about a lot of this information with the brothers from IMC Nation. So I was just going there, tapping in there. Outside of that, I would suggest, I also have a Patreon available, in which I will be sharing different information on astrology and whatnot in my personal process. All I can do is really speak from my experience, right? I can't speak from anybody else's. So I will talk about what it is that I know about myself and my process, how I interpret things. And that's just with the intention so that everybody else can do the same, right? Everybody has to do their own homework and do what it is that they have to do. There's an app, I'll give this tip for sure. There's an app on the Apple iPhone store. I don't know if it's not available on the Droid, but there's an app called Astro Future. They can download that, put your information in, and that's what I use to get all my information on everybody, literally. So I have a whole list on there of different people, friends, family. Like I said, this is how I see it and correlate to the world. So if I know you need your birth time, your birthplace, and of course the birth date. And let me see. I think that's it. Birth time, place, dates, and yeah, that's it. That's all you need. So you put that into that app, the Astro Future. It gives you feedback as to what your personal chart is. If you don't know the time, they have a suggestion you put like 12 p.m., but it also depends on the chart and all of that stuff. But yeah, man, I really recommend everybody get started on that process. Start to figure out, even if it's not just through that app, there's different things, different websites. There's another website that's called Astrolab. I think it's .net or .com or what have you. But those tools are literally meant to be used and applied. So you put your information in there, get the feedback as to what that is. And then once you do that, once you get your chart, you want to begin to break down the process of understanding each aspect, right? So I say the app Astro Future because it has an element in there where it explains all the planets, and it explains all the houses, and it gives you a breakdown as to what is what, how this makes sense. So what I did, I actually, hold on, grab my sheet here. So I have several sheets here that I've crafted and created for myself, but this is what I did. I'll just give you a brief one because that one was a little deeper. This year, I don't know if you guys can see it or what have you, but it says Neptune in first house. First house is the house of first impressions, right? So this is me breaking down myself. So I did the research. I went through YouTube videos, did everything I could to find out exactly what that means. So there are certain planets and certain houses in your own chart that once you go into, it gives you certain aspects as to how you may correlate with the world. Once again, you're the only one that can confirm this, right? So they can give you this information. They can say this is how you do this, that, and the other. None of that matters if you can't confirm it for yourself. But these are the things I was able to confirm with myself. So the Neptune in first house, I'm just giving you this quick example, but is strong illusions, right? So I have seen that I deal with strong illusions sometimes, right? Every now and then, I'll be in my mind, creating this noise or atmosphere or what have you, that is a true illusion. Then the second one is a very aware of surroundings. So although I'm creating strong illusions, I'm aware of my surroundings as a martial artist, of course. So I find different ways on how to make it make sense for me, right? And how does this correlate with my life experience? The next one says people will treat you how they think you are, which is different than how you really are, which would be true because the first house, once again, is the house that we show the world. It's the house of first impressions. It's the house of self, right? This is how I know myself. So this is how I present myself. How people see me is a Sagittarius, right? Because that's my ascendant. My ascendant being a Sagittarius is very philosophical, religious, and spiritual. Those type of qualities.
Jordan, would you say that people like sort of, as they start reading more about this, it sort of starts to become more like second nature? Like, is that how you kind of did it? Like you start watching all these videos and you became like a searchlight and you're like trying to find the missing piece towards the self, right? You try to just
Yeah.
search for it. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
exactly.
Man, I just got such a powerful download. It's so interesting that they're called houses, right?
Yeah.
Um, and to think of like a house as a home where somewhere we feel safe, right? And it's our habitat. And it's
Nice.
interesting how the word habit isn't habitat. It's
Mm.
like where's your habit at? You know?
Peace.
So so like where's your habit at is where you live, right? Your habits is like your embodiment in a sense. It's like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
becomes a
yeah.
part of you.
Nice.
And
Yeah,
I think that's such a powerful like thing that I just got. And
nice.
also the understanding of, I think, why people associate solar consciousness to this awakening kind of like this rising energy
Mm.
of the sun is because there's a neurochemical element to it, which is it releases serotonin,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's very true.
And the moon releases melatonin. So it actually keeps you awake. So the
Mhm.
awakening is
Yeah,
kind of like, this other like element of it that
yeah,
we can tap into.
man.
So, and also for people who have like depression, who are like
Mm.
indoors, not seeing the sun, they're gonna
Yeah,
have
yeah,
less serotonin, right? And
100%.
instead of taking all these SSRIs, which are these selective, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right, which
Yeah,
give you more serotonin, they can just go outside. But
mm,
it's tough to go outside when you have like you're draining, like your life essence seems like pressed down, which is what depression
mm,
means, right? And
yeah,
so like if you can push yourself up in a sense, awaken to the truth, then you can
mm,
get outside and
mm,
start to, you know, optimize yourself basically in a
yeah,
sense where you can get this
100%.
vitamin D
Vitamin
and
D. You don't have to laugh at that one every time. Now, speaking of vitamin D, often during December months, especially in the northern areas, you get the holiday blues. Let's say, right? Christmas is coming. It's often dark. I mean, it's barely 5, and it's dark outside, right?
Mhm.
This is a question to both Sumit and Jordan. How would you increase your melanin? You know, either from the perspective of the flow state or from the perspective of astrology.
Mm.
Because apparently melanin relates to having a lot of energy, feeling yourself being not per se woke as fuck, but being awake.
Yeah, well, I would refer to that video that we were playing earlier,
Right.
that I played earlier, as well. That was one thing I didn't know personally, knowing that hydration is a major factor, which is very, very true. That's something I've been personally striving to correct for myself for the last few weeks here. And I recently got a jug of like alkaline water, and from one of the guys that owns a water and ice store out here, one of my family members. So, hydration is huge. It's huge, huge, huge. It's so huge in the way that I process the world, because especially being out here in Arizona, it's dry desert. But on top of that, I I know that I don't speak 100% right if I'm not hydrated, right? I know that I'm not thinking right if I'm not hydrated. And the feeling of hydration um, is revitalizing, right? It's energizing. You have more energy, you have more air, you have more oxygen in your body to fuel you through to whatever it is. So I can assume that your hydration has a major factor on your melanin. And then like he was the gentleman's name in that video, for anybody else wants to follow up, is Bobby Hemmett. But basically he was saying that also sleep deprivation is a huge thing. That those are three factors, the lack of sunlight, the lack of sleep, and the lack of hydration that will defeat anybody's character, initially, if they're not consciously aware of how their intake is of those three things, right? If you're not getting enough sleep, you're not going to be at your full function. That's just a guarantee, right? And of course, we got the beast process, so I think we've almost evolved, beyond that to a certain extent. But there is that balance period, of course, in phase 2 where we find that rest, right? And that's the balance. That's the and then we have practices like TM, transcendental meditation, that will supersede that rest in a sense. That's how I feel when I do that. So sleep deprivation, once again, hydration and actual sunlight. So if sunlight's not accessible to you, I would suggest, get as much sleep as you can and stay hydrated as much as you can. And when I talk about hydration, one way to hydrate, because all the water that we are in constant contact with or that we buy or acquire, often isn't alkaline. It's not set up for us to be successful. Alkaline is what hydrates us. And of course, everybody can do your research on that. But the pH that's advertised on the alkaline waters that we get in the stores is just not what it is. Okay, they've done different tests, this, that, and the other. All of that stuff is nonsense. The best way, if anybody wants to alkalize their water, of course, I'm not a scientist. We can talk to Dr. Scripps here and follow up there. But I would suggest just putting lime. You can do lime juice or lemon juice in your water in the morning times, or any time that you drink any kind of water. And that process begins to alkalize the water, because it does something to I can't tell you exactly what it does to the water molecules, the H2O, but I know it definitely plays a role. It definitely plays a role in hydrating, so.
Yeah, definitely, man. There is definitely some anecdotal evidence, as far as I know, that citrus it improves your melanin levels. So like any kind of like vitamin C, like a vitamin C supplementation would even do it. Or berries or like leafy greens or citrus of any kind. So vitamin C has a direct correlation to your melanin levels. But then also it's really interesting how, you know, hydration, of course, is super important for flow state as well, right? Like, if you're not hydrated, yeah, you just can't be in the flow. We are 70% water, So if we're not giving ourselves that source,
Right.
what are we doing? But anyway, there are these like lamps that you can find for people in like Sweden and other countries where maybe it's a little bit more winter time, right? Um, Netherlands, right, Ryan? Um, that people with seasonal affective disorder, right, which basically means that they get instantly depressed if there's no sun, right? There's a disorder that where actually if you don't get sunlight or it's not sunny, you get super depressed, right? And in those cultures, sometimes the rates are higher, right? Because there's less sun. And so these lamps, apparently you can get these lamps that give you that same kind of sunlight essence. It's kind of like an artificial lamp that you can get. Um, sunlight lamp. I guess you could like, I don't know. You could look it up, man. I don't know what they're called exactly, but look up like lamps, seasonal affective disorder, sunlight lamps, something like that. Sun ray lamps. And look it up, because I think that's so potent if you're tapping into sunlight energy just in your room, without opening a window. Like that's kind of cool. That's a really cool process, specifically if you are in these more Scandinavian countries where you're not getting that much sunlight, right? For sure.
Yeah, real quick, I want to add to that as well. I of course, recently have been on a very, very strong process of imagination and tapping into our imagination. What came up for me when Samet was talking right now was just knowing and understanding that we can also, I mean, if I was in that situation where I didn't have access to direct sunlight, I know what it feels like to be under the sun, right? I know what it feels like to have that sun shining on my skin or whatnot, right? That's a feeling that I can tap into at any time. So I can close my eyes. So if I was in that situation, I would close my eyes, literally, and sit down and imagine myself on a grass field in the middle of a park or wherever, I can get the most sun, or I'm at the top of a mountain, like I like to do, and go there, close my eyes, and I would literally just imagine the sun hitting me. And by that process alone, you can start to tap into what you would receive, right, from the sun. That's how I would apply that in that situation, because it's so important for me that I get that sunlight for myself. Like that's part of my process. Like before we go to Brotherhood of the Beast throughout the day, normally I'll go out and engage and get some sun, because I know what it's gonna do for me. It's just gonna put me at that frequency that's going to allow me to operate, more consciously for myself. So that's how I tap into that, or that's how I would do that if I didn't have access to that sunlight, myself. So I definitely encourage everybody, because we all have, an imaginative process. We all have a creative process that we can tap into like that. At any point in time, we can visualize ourselves exactly where we want to be, knowing that the sun, is an energy that is, we have that same energy on the inside of us, right? We can warm up our bodies, what I'm saying, in the midst of 30-degree weather or 0-degree weather, what have you. It doesn't matter. We have that conscious creative ability, but how effective we are using that, imagine the process. That's what defines our experience in a sense. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Man.
So things I will be doing very shortly. Putting vitamin C in everything. Vitamin D and everything. Figuring out where I can find alkaline water in the Netherlands, buying a lot of lime juice.
Yes, sir.
Buying the fucking lime tree,
Man,
whatever it takes,
Jordan, I really like what you said about imagining the sunlight hitting your skin. Like, I think that's such a powerful technique. And when I channel Janus, he told me something that I'll never forget. He said, imagination is the interface between your body and your spirit.
Mm. Wow.
And when I heard that, I was like, damn, like that's really cool. That's really super cool.
Nice.
And the more I think about it, I think that imagination is our subconscious world, right? We can't really see it. It's something invisible to us, but the more visible we can make it, the more feeling we can give it, which is what manifestation really is. We're giving feeling to the images, right? Adding feeling to images, and then we're manifesting. So yeah, I really like that idea of imagining the sunlight hitting your skin. Like, if AZD would, he said in the Beast Camp, I believe, like, Superman, his power is like from the sun, right? And so if we can imagine, even if you're Superman, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna have a different posture, first of all, but also as you're gazing at the sun, you're actually imagining that it's giving you more energy than the rest of the world, which creates this psychological, thing inside of you, where it's like,
that's the first law. That's the first law right there. All is mind. All in the state of mind. It's the basis, the basic datum, I would say, within IMC Nation from AZD. So yeah, man, that's everything right there. To be able to tap into that, unlocks it's a different part of your consciousness, especially if somebody who's listening here isn't aware of their conscious ability to be able to do that, right? The moment that you unlock that, you unlock a different part of your character, a different part of your existence, really, because we can imagine anything at any time. I can imagine being in where Summit is in India right now. You know what I'm saying? I can imagine that literally, and the only thing that's gonna stop me from getting there is my own mind, right? My own mind is the one that would be in the way of me imagining that, because I can imagine anything. I can imagine me being on the moon right now, with no mask, no suit, no nothing, just being out sitting on the moon meditating, right? I can imagine that. There's nobody can stop me from doing that. And that's our own creative process that we can all tap into. So yeah, man, go ahead, Ryan. Oh, I thought Ryan was gonna say something.
Oh man. Yeah, just I really like that idea of just being able to travel anywhere in your mind. Like, just it's such a freedom. You know what I mean? Like, the fact that we can use this not only for ourselves, but actually something really powerful that I understood, and this is through learning some stuff about Tantra and things like this, right? Which is basically like, a lot of Tantra focuses on body, but there's not enough Tantra practitioners actually using energy with the body and then being able to actually like optimize it in a sense. And the origin of the word tan means to stretch. It is like a loom, it is weaving, right? It is expansive energy, if you can think about it. So if you're stretching something, you're slowing it down as well. That's why
Mhm.
these tantric practitioners through the sex, there's like slow, really slow sex, right? Taking the presence, taking the time. So it's this stretch instrument. Tra is basically means instrument or tool. So mantra is like mind instrument, you know.
Mhm.
So this stretch tool, this expansion tool that
Mhm.
the ancients have given us, we
Yeah.
can now basically use it to be like Doctor Strange in a sense, where we can slow time down in order for us to imagine uh, a life where we have this energy of expansion, right? It's this energy of growth. And I think
Mhm.
that it's really powerful when, like, I could go like this, right? And like, imagine this is like, you know, Michael Jackson's glove.
Mhm.
You know, now imagine that it's like a Thanos Infinity Gauntlet. You know, now imagine that it's like, you know, like an artisanal glove, like from the medieval age, and we can keep going like this, right? But it changes some frequency in your hand. You're gonna have a
Mhm.
different. Now you have it's like a murderer's like glove, like OJ's
Mhm.
glove, right?
Yeah.
Now you're
Yeah.
like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
your whole storyline is changing up based on just this imagination.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so the fact that we have this ability to do that and we respond to our imaginations like that is
Mhm.
powerful. But the problem is not the problem, I'd say, but the challenge is that,
Mhm.
you know, people will hijack our imaginations through
Mhm.
advertisements, through, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
people
Yeah.
telling us different things over and over and over again subliminally, right?
That's so
And
powerful.
that is the real like key to, if we have a sovereignty over our own imagination, then you
Mhm.
can be like, no, I'm gonna go to Mars right now, and you have no like
Yeah.
right to tell me that, you know,
Yeah.
I have to go to the park or something else, right?
Mhm.
I can
Right.
totally walk through a park and imagine that I'm in Mars, and that's my freedom and right as a
That's,
conscious, you know, holistic being.
yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, man.
That's everything. That's everything right there. To be
Everything,
able
man.
to take your to take your claim back once again. And that's like that's your right. That's your right. Like you were just saying, that's your right to as a spirit to exist within your own consciousness. Nobody else can take away from that. Nobody can do anything to stop you from doing that. Like you were just saying. So that's huge, man. I'm curious. You were saying about the tantra, the tantric practice. How do you apply that in particular? Like, were you saying the stretching of you were saying the stretching of the tool, but the stretching of the tool of the imagination. Is that what you were getting at in that sense?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you have one specific thought that you can stretch out. So, like, for instance, let's say you're imagining, I don't know, like a little mouse. Okay, now the mouse has a jetpack. Now the,
Mm.
you know, now the mouse is lifting up into the air. So the more elements you're adding to it, you're stretching it. You're adding to the imagination and you're
Yeah,
expanding it, right? So
gotcha.
that's why I think tantra can be this stretch tool for our imagination, where we're just like improvising almost. We're
Mm.
spontaneous, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I learned about this idea of like, usually when we as men specifically, we go into the sexual fantasies a lot, you know.
Mhm.
Um, that's kind of like most of our days, right? We're just like fucking thinking about it.
Mhm.
But what if we could stretch the thought
Mm.
throughout the day? So it's not like this, this impulsive thing, but it's like a smooth transitional sexual thought that could ride throughout the day, that keeps
Mm.
us like engaged and happy and positive.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And we could actually like go into our own minds, have a sexual image, an object of desire
Mhm.
through our meditation, and just
Mm.
keep that in our meditation and be able
Mhm.
to. I know some people who can do this and they can meditate for a really long time because they have that
Mm.
libido, and at the
Yeah.
same time they have the imagination.
Mm.
And if you have both of those elements, the sexual energy, which is a creative energy, with the
Yeah.
imagination,
Yeah.
now you're like a master of this thing, man.
Yeah. Nice. 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 Yeah. That's exactly, man. That's exactly what I've been tapping into in a sense. Um, I myself am a practitioner of retaining my own seeds and cultivating my seed in that sense. So I'm a practitioner in that sense, and I definitely feel the stretch in that, like being able to elongate the process of that feeling once again. knowing that, especially tapping into this sexual feeling, because bro, that's everything, like we were just saying, for men in particular, we spend so much time imagining, being in a certain situation or scenario that we want, sexually. And, without apology for it, we can imagine whatever the fuck we want to in our mind, right? There's nobody that can stop you from doing that, like we were just talking about. And to stretch that, but to elongate even just that feeling, to tap into that feeling. That's really what I love. I love to tap into that feeling of, that sexual energy. It's not even not not engaging in sexual activity or anything like that, but it's allowing that feeling within your imagination to propel you in a sense, right? Use it as fuel to be able to fuel your imagination, to steer you to exactly what it is you want. Having that sexual gratification is a similar feeling of what you want when it comes to your manifestation. You want a new house, a new car, a new job, new women in your life. All of that is a feeling that we can attain at any moment in time. And a stretching of our imagination, but tapping into that deep level of feeling place in a sense, putting ourselves there and then allowing us to tap into that frequency. And there's nothing like that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a very powerful tool right there.
Yeah, man. I love that sexual alchemy that you just introduced to the audience, because yeah, man, I've been a practitioner of, semen retention for a while, and I kind of have seasons where I dive in and out of it, almost give myself different, like, kind of almost milestones, I guess you could say, or like different checkpoints in the video game,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
I start worrying less about like days and all this shit, where I'm more like, okay, like, is my life improving? Like,
right.
does it get dramatically
What
better when I do
like
this
what are you
practice?
creating? What are you creating basically? Like how is this energy being converted in a sense? Is that the kind of thoughts that you have?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
totally. Because it is that sublimation. Like, you are transforming that lower basal, like, primal energy into
exactly.
your art form, into your
Yeah,
creativity,
yeah,
and you're pulling it through your heart energy almost. You're like acting it out into the world through your solar plexus,
mm,
rather than your root. And like, I think that, yeah, man, there's something to it. In ancient Indian culture, this was just a staple, right? But I think a lot of people, they don't know how to really ride the wave of that. They end up being like these horny celibates rather than actually, you know,
yeah,
like permeate that energy, like you said, like,
yeah.
and nut up their spine in a sense, and get
Right, right.
kundalini up.
Yeah, yeah,
And so,
yeah.
yeah, man.
I was gonna say, yeah, real quick. That's powerful because a lot of people um end up going through that process and then don't know what to do with that energy, right? The whole purpose is meant to go through that process so that you can steer that energy into something creative to create, right? To begin to, generate something that is for your life, to take that same energy that helps you to create a baby, right? To literally apply that to your life, right? To create, let's say, a business or a program or a video, even a video blog, whatever the hell it is, it's some kind of creation. It comes as a result of the energy that you're cultivating, right? That's the whole purpose. That's the whole meaning behind it, is to be able to generate something out of it, not just to go through it and to be lost in that energy and just to have it. Have you? Yeah, it's cool, to make it, past these. I mean, I've gone so many amount of days or what have you. I got friends that have gone. I think he went like almost a year straight, like literally a whole year, and he blogged about it every single day on YouTube. And that's powerful in itself. But what was he doing? He was creating. He was creating videos, right? He was along that process, adding value to the world, and that's the whole point: is to be able to alchemize, like we were saying, all that energy and use it, right? Not just to be stagnant with it or just to hold on to it. No, that's not the point. And like I said, it doesn't even mean refraining from sexual activity at all. You can still engage 100%. You just got to be conscious of what it is that you're doing. And so it's powerful, man. It's a very powerful process that I've been implementing and learning and whatnot. And it's powerful that we took the time and the opportunity to speak on it today. So thank you for that.
Definitely, brother. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Indeed.
And yeah, we appreciate this a lot, man. You shared a lot of value tsunamis today.
No tsunamis, which is funny because it's monsoon season in India.
Oh yeah, man. There's a fucking cyclone warning today. Anyway.
Making it rain. Yeah.
Wow.
Let it rain. Let it rain.
That's
All right.
crazy.
Thank you for attending, audience, and peace out, my brothers.
Indeed.
May we never be the same again.
Indeed. See you
Sir,
guys
salute.
next week.